weekly print newspaper, as well as unlimited access to their dynamic website for just $1. That's right, $1. Go right now to trustednewspaper.com. That's trustednewspaper.com to subscribe. Do it now. trustednewspaper.com. trustednewspaper.com.
Balance of Nature's fruits and vegetables in a capsule, changing the world one life at a time.
I am 73. I work 40 hours a week. I take Balance of Nature pretty much religiously. One day, about 2 weeks ago, I cleaned a house that was 3.5 hours, another one that was 2.5 hours, another one that was 3.5 hours, and then I cleaned a commercial building and then cleaned half of another building. I got home at 10 o'clock at night. And who can do that at 73? Balance of Nature actually gives me quite a bit of energy. It's just amazing that fruits and vegetables could actually fix your problems. I don't have to have like coffee and whatever. I just take these and I have the energy.
Right now, Balance of Nature is offering free shipping and 35% off on any new preferred order. Call 1-800-2468-751 or go to balanceofnature.com and use discount code Chicago.
This hourly segment is brought to you by Papa Nicholas Coffee. Papa Nicholas Coffee, roasted fresh daily in Batavia, Illinois.
6:38. Let's get a check on the roads in the AM 560 traffic center with Jim.
We are looking at some delays on the inbound Ryan extending to the outbound Kennedy right now. Traffic is slow from the Stevenson on the inbound Ryan. The inbound Stevenson ramp to the inbound Ryan is heavy. Those delays then extend up to the outbound Kennedy near Ohio Street. Your travel time from 95th Street to downtown Chicago is 16 minutes, and then from downtown to O'Hare, looking at a 24-minute travel time. Eastbound, it's 20 with the reversibles open inbound. The Aidens runs 15 minutes like Cook to Montrose. The Eisenhower, 29 minutes, 390 to downtown, up on 28. Stevenson, 29 minutes, 355 to Lakeshore Drive. I-57, 16 minutes, 80 to the Merge, Bishopport 13. I'm Jim Talamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Worried about basement flooding? It's time to call Permaseal, 800-421-SCAL. Chicago's Morning Answer continues next. Your official Chicagoland weather forecast. In the AM 560 Weather Center, cloudy, snow showers, and that winter weather advisory is in effect till around 4 this afternoon, high 26. Currently 21 at O'Hare. Next news at 7. Breaking news as it happens. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
From the Matrix Home Solutions Studios, this is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Dan and Amy, and continuing from the conversation we were having about Biden's racial equity executive order and the real-world impact of this sort of thinking. Oregon weighing race-based vaccine preferences. The state's Vaccine Advisory Committee group of 27 individuals tasked with devising a vaccine sequencing plan focused on health equity to ensure the needs of systemically affected populations, communities of color, tribal communities, people with intellectual and developmental disabilities are met. In Chicago, Lori Lightfoot pursuing the same.
Yeah.
So
last night.
25-year-old, I don't care what your race is, healthy 25-year-old should be prioritized over an 80-year-old because the 25-year-old is Latino and the 80-year-old is white?
Well, what they said was that they're going to prioritize zip codes that have a high caseloads, that they want to go into those neighborhoods and vaccinate everyone, regardless of age or conditions or comorbidities.
So, again, the race equity ideology means old people have to be sacrificed to the on the altar of racial outcomes that we desire. That's the real world implication of, in part, of what we were talking about, in addition to how it plays out in all of the other sectors mentioned and it's permeated every sector in society. So this is part of the folly of the Biden era when it comes to public policy, where you're talking about lives on the line. And then there's just the straight up folly where you're talking about mass delusion. And that, of course, implicates mask wearing.
Well, yeah, because there's more contagious coronavirus variants, and health experts, including Dr. Anthony Fauci yesterday, said it's probably a good idea to start doubling up on your face masks. And of course, the mainstream media was all over that. That was in the A block yesterday, to spread panic and fear. We can't let off.
We still don't know why the new variants are so contagious. So as an extra layer of protection, they recommend wearing 2 masks. And to limit your exposure, they suggest skipping that next trip to the grocery store or coffee shop.
And then Miguel Almaguer from NBC News is valiantly putting on a second mask over his first mask, to really drive home the point to spread this fear. Well, we don't know all about the UK, the Brazilian, and the South African variant. Well, we don't know if they're more lethal. They could be more contagious. Nobody knows. But let's lock it all, shut it all down again.
Bridget Fatassi had, I think, the definitive tweet on the topic.
What?
The Illuminati gathers on a yacht somewhere in the Mediterranean. Quote, I'm bored. How many masks can we get these dumb fracks to wear? Unquote. Yeah, I think that's about the basis of that policy and the suggestion as such. For more on all this, we're pleased to be joined by Phil Kerpen, president of the American Commitment, chairman of the Internet Freedom Coalition as well. Phil, thanks for joining us.
Hey, great to be with you.
So 2 masks, 3 masks, 4 masks, body condoms.
Cats and dogs, did you see that one?
Cats and
Which
dogs
one?
need to be vaccinated. Absolutely.
Are you serious?
There is no. There's.
No, there's the dog mask, the mask vaccine. Yeah, the dog vaccine. Yeah, I saw that as well.
Yeah, cats and dogs need to be vaccinated, according to researchers at a number of universities, including the University of Minnesota. Not because there is even one confirmed case of transmission from a cat or a dog to a person, but because it's possible.
Right.
So, and I guess black tabbies would be ahead of the line of 80-year-old white guys too.
Well, and by the way, the point you were just making, Dan, Oregon has the worst vaccine distribution in the entire country by age. Only 13% of their vaccines have gone to people over age 70, which is where almost all of the serious morbidity and mortality of the disease is. And so, it's not a harmless thing. It's not sloganeering. These states that are choosing to put politics ahead of saving lives are going to kill people. I mean, they will have more deaths as a consequence of that decision.
But I feel like we have to stop old people from dying in order to have our children to have their lives back. And that doesn't happen because people in nursing homes, they die. I'm sorry. The average lifespan is 9 months to 1 year.
But isn't it remarkable that we were told we had to shut down the entire society and that our children had to sacrifice their present and future and suffer enormous psychological and emotional harm on the theory that this would somehow prevent a chain of transmission that would result in killing an old person, and yet now we have a vaccine and we're not giving it to old people in a lot of these places.
Yeah, right.
It's quite remarkable.
Well, and you're right about this too. I mean, so much of this has been the promotion of this illusion, which has fed so much of the delusion of control over nature, control over the economy. We turn off the economy for a little bit, then we just flip it back on.
Like a machine. Yeah, but it's really insane. And the problem is we've got politicians and public health officials, which is really just another flavor of politician, who are unwilling to ever admit that we can't stop a highly infectious respiratory virus through government dictates. That simple and obvious fact is out of bounds for them. And so it always has to be, no, double mask, triple mask. We're going to lock down harder. We're going to close more things. And yet you look at, about a week ago, California passed Florida for total per capita COVID cases cumulative since this thing started. 9 months of lockdown, and they got more per capita cases than Florida, which has been wide open for months and months and months. And I don't know how anyone can look at that and say, well, the problem is we didn't lock down hard enough, or we didn't enforce it hard enough, or it was the people who didn't follow the dictates. And it's kind of, if people can't follow your dictates, they're not very helpful from a public health standpoint. You got to consider that, if it's going to be sustainable for months and months and months and months. And I just think at the end of this, pretty much everyone who was going to have the virus is still going to have it, except now you've got all of these economic problems and social problems and educational problems that were created by these futile attempts to stop a highly infectious respiratory virus.
Something else that's really been interesting to watch is in terms of sort of in the under the heading of illusion of control. The people in charge pretend like they're a steady hand on the rudder, when in point of fact, they have been the greatest hysterics, the greatest demagogues. They are the ones who have shown no restraint, no measure, no balance in thinking.
Yeah, I mean, right from the top, the king of our country, Anthony Fauci, has been on literally every side of every significant question in this thing. Don't mask, double mask, wear goggles. There's no asymptomatic transmission. There's tons of asymptomatic transmission. Herd immunity thresholds, the regular formula we've used forever, which is about 67% based on the R number. No, now it's 85%. And, I don't know how you can continue to take people seriously who change what they say, left and right. And, of course, the politicians have been even worse. And, when they change completely. And anyone who disagrees is anti-science or is a heretic. I mean, right from the beginning, when they were calling for these lockdowns based on what Imperial College London and Harvard were saying, anyone who said, no, actually, that's the wrong strategy according to Stanford and Oxford, they say, oh, you're anti-science. You like the Stanford and Oxford scientists, you're anti-science. Only our scientists count as science. And this has been the attitude from the beginning of this thing. And, what they claim is so obvious. Everyone knows lockdowns work. Really? Where? Where have they worked? Where have they worked more than temporarily, except for a couple of places, Australia and New Zealand, that are islands and have strict border control and got it early enough that they could contain it. I mean, the U.S. and Europe, it was already widespread before we even knew it existed. You were never going to put that genie back in the bottle.
Yeah, and the good news is, I mean, the virus is less dangerous than originally thought, but now you have these new strains, the UK one, the Brazilian, and the South African one. What do we know about that?
Well, they don't seem to behave that differently than the other strains. The South African one is probably the most concerning because it seems to evade some of the immune response, which means you're going to have a little bit more reinfection and possibly a little bit less vaccine effectiveness, although Moderna's working on a booster shot specific to that, so if that does become an issue or a problem, we would be ready with a variant of the vaccine to deal with that. But even the most different variants, you're probably going to have a pretty good immune response based on your T cells and your memory B cells. And even if you don't have that strong antibody response that's going to be kind of sterilizing and prevent you from getting it at all, it's not going to be as severe as it was the first time around because your immune system is trained to deal with it. It's been through something similar. And so I think that a lot of the hype is overblown, and particularly this idea that the UK variant is going to be so much more contagious that we'll have another massive wave and it'll overwhelm everything. Well, the UK peaked right after they were issuing all those warnings. The UK peaked and started heading down pretty dramatically, as did the other European countries where it's predominant. And so I just don't think that we're going to see, another huge wave. I think that this was it. But, I could be wrong. This thing has surprised a lot of us many times. But the idea that a second or third or fourth mask is somehow the key, when every place that has full mask compliance, it didn't seem to make any difference to the course of the disease. And to say masks, to look at the data, see the masks didn't really make much difference, and say we need 2 or 3 of them, I just find really ridiculous.
Well, and the people that we know that double masked at one of the events we did, they're the ones who got it. And they double mask on and have shields. It's ridiculous.
At least now when I see one of these, stern liberals, yelling at everyone, making sure the mask is over the nose, if they have only one, I'm going to say, sorry, single masking is murder.
Yeah.
You need to get that double immediately. You're out of compliance with the new collective wisdom.
Well, it's just consistent with the overall approach to society, which is to say, if government isn't effective at doing something, the problem is it's not big enough. So double down. I mean, literally, normally we just double down with other people's money. Now we're doubling down with personal protective equipment.
By the way, guys, we now have a treatment, a therapeutic for this that's extremely effective. We've got the monoclonal antibodies from Eli Lilly and from Regeneron. They're about 70% effective in reducing hospitalization. Everybody over the age of 65 who tests positive qualifies for them. Lots of people who are under 65 also qualify if they have medical conditions or, some other high-risk condition. We've got something that works. There are infusion centers all over the country in all 50 states, and yet none of our public health people ever talk about it. They don't say, if you're 65 plus and test positive, this is where the infusion center is in our town. You need to go get it. It works. And if they were focused on that, instead of having about 75% of the doses going unused, which is where we are right now, we'd be doing much better than all of this scolding and all of this trying to blame people for catching a virus. So, that's the other thing that really drives me nuts right now is we actually have a treatment. This is not like it was a year ago where it was sort of you can't do anything. We have a treatment that's extremely effective, and yet I almost never see our public health officials talk about it. They don't promote it.
In addition to that, we have some caution about the vaccines for certain individuals, like the World Health Organization telling pregnant women not to take the Moderna vaccine yesterday, that story out. So then if a pregnant woman got the virus, then what would you tell her to do? Obviously, you look at therapeutics, and it's not just the monoclonal antibody that's shown promise, real effectiveness, but ivermectin continues to be talked about and other such treatments. In addition to that, yesterday you had Merck announce that it's suspending its pursuit of a vaccine and focusing instead onto therapeutics that it has under development, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, it's nice to see some of the vaccines fail because it tells you that they're not just rushing them all through no matter what. So, it is good from that standpoint. The one thing that I find a little bit disappointing about Merck is there was some pretty suggestive evidence early on that the MMR vaccine had some cross coverage, which might explain why young people who are always up to date on their MMR are at near zero risk. And, we typically don't give boosters to older people very often. And I thought that research was really interesting. Merck, which is the only manufacturer of MMR in this country, totally downplayed it, said they had no interest in it, and said they were going to develop their own coronavirus-specific vaccines. And, of course, now they pulled the plug on those. And, it's sort of irrelevant now whether MMR has a cross-protective effect because, we have vaccines now. But I think, a year ago, it would have been much more helpful if they'd kind of embraced that instead of downplaying it. But, look, no matter what, you're going to have people, the disease is still going to be around. No vaccine is perfect, and it's never going to be attractive to everyone. And therapeutics are much, much better targeted than vaccines because you're treating people who already have the disease as opposed to trying to get everyone who doesn't have it to do something preventively. And so it's really important to have effective therapeutics. And I agree with you, by the way, that the ivermectin trials were very, very encouraging. I'm surprised that we haven't seen more of a focus on that in this country. The countries that have done that have had pretty good results with it. But, for whatever reason, if it's not a patented, expensive biotech drug, there's not much interest in it in this country. But that's why I'm so surprised that the antibodies, the antibody treatments are not more popular because they're exactly the kind of drug we usually love in this country, and yet they're not being used that much.
Phil Kerpen, president of the American Commitment and chairman of the Internet Freedom Coalition as well. Phil, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
All right, have a good one, guys.
Thank you, and he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
The Lou Dobbs Financial Report is brought to you by Signature Bank, helping local businesses succeed. Visit signaturebank.bank for your commercial banking needs.
I'm Lou Dobbs. Consumer confidence up this month. Amazon hiring spree will double Boston workforce. PepsiCo announces development of plant-based drinks. Those stories next. You've all probably heard of asbestos and know that it's dangerous. Most mesothelioma diagnoses are thought to be related to asbestos exposure. People who were exposed to asbestos decades ago are being diagnosed to this day with mesothelioma. That's because it can take as many as 30 or even 50 years to develop. But did you also know there is money to pay victims of asbestos exposure from years ago? An estimated $30 billion is available to help compensate victims and their families. If you or a member of your family have been diagnosed with mesothelioma, you may be able to receive some of this money without ever going to court or filing a lawsuit. Get a free legal review today. Call Sokolov Law at 1-800-910-1950. That number again, 1-800-910-1950. 1-800-910-1950. Call today. 1-800-910-1950. Consumer confidence here in the United States